June 12, 1944. La Roche-sur-Yon, Western France. The stone bridge rose like a spine across the calm river. Thick steel arches, reinforced joints, triple blast shielding. Lieutenant Gerhard Voss lit a cigarette with a steady hand and smirked. He watched the American planes overhead, their silver bellies catching the morning light. One veered off, too wide, too slow. "They've been trying for days," he muttered. "They can't touch this span." Behind him, convoys rumbled. Fuel trucks, half-tracks, ammunition crates ticking under heat. Voss turned back to his map, calculated angles, wind speeds, fuse tolerances. Above, the pilot was flying too low, too casually. A junior radio man said something about engine noise. Voss didn't hear. He didn't know the sky had learned a new trick. June 12, 1944. 05:42 hours. La Roche-sur-Yon supply corridor. Mist curled over the river like smoke from a long dead fire. Beneath the arch of the bridge, reflections shimmered. Trucks, helmets, crate stacks. Each axle groaned in rhythm. From the command post above the southern embankment, Lieutenant Voss watched the logistical ballet unfold. 42 tons of fuel, 62 vehicles, every 12 hours. Columns from the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division had passed through just hours before. Another wave was due by noon. "This bridge is the lung," the engineer said yesterday, adjusting his spectacles. "Cut it, nothing breathes." They had reinforced the western truss after a failed British raid. Double-stranded steel. Auxiliary pontoons stood ready nearby, though dusty from disuse. Inside the guard station, a Feldwebel scribbled daily tonnage. Panzer fuel, munitions, Ersatzteile, spare parts. Everything feeding the Atlantic defenses just miles north. A Ju-52 buzzed overhead, wobbling slightly from a wind shear, and banked east. From the water's edge came the hum of portable radios, field cooking bacon grease, and the sharp clack of boots on concrete. Voss inhaled deeply. Confidence tasted like machine oil and burnt coffee. They had the discipline. They had the math. They had the steel. He glanced again at the Allied skies. Lazy patrols, high altitude, predictable. "Mark my words," he told the engineer. "They don't improvise. They calculate, like accountants with wings." The engineer chuckled. "And we have the receipt. No alarms, no scrambling. Just another morning on the bridge. Just another tick in the schedule. June 12, 1944, 08:11 hours. La Roche-sur-Yon Bridge Outpost. The mist hadn't lifted. It clung low, stubborn, like a wet cloth draped over the valley. Visibility at the east approach dropped to 30 meters. Voss frowned, checked the weather log again. The Luftwaffe observer had filed clear skies. Wrong. Down below, a junior non-com twisted the radio knob. Static. Then a burst of Allied jazz, drowned by a rising drone. "Engine cluster," the NCO said, but off pattern. Voss didn't respond. A fuel convoy was overdue. Probably a flat tire. Maybe a detour from bombed-out roads near Saumur. Inside the hut, the engineer was drawing reinforcement sketches. "We should double the lattice on the eastern underbeam," he mumbled. "Just in case." Voss waved it off. The bridge was overbuilt. It didn't need more steel. It needed routine. Another Allied plane skimmed the edge of cloud cover, then vanished. No alarm sounded. The guard rotations continued. Coffee poured, cigarettes lit. But beneath it all, beneath the concrete, the cables, the pride, something small had shifted. The wind had changed direction. No one recalculated. June 12, 1944, 08:17 hours. 11,000 feet above La Roche-sur-Yon. Captain Will Stitch Rayner had 23 seconds to make the drop. His P-47 Thunderbolt shuddered slightly as he throttled into dive angle. 61 degrees. Nose down, bomb bay open. Altimeter ticking fast. Below, the bridge, still intact, still feeding steel and fuel into the Reich. His fingers tapped the casing of the Mk-43 bomb. But this one was different. He had welded a half-inch washer to the delayed fuse cylinder, a trick whispered at a dusty airstrip in Kent by a British mechanic who'd lost 3 brothers in Calais. The washer made it tumble. The tumbling twisted the fuse just enough, 5 seconds delay after impact. Enough time for the bomb to slide beneath the superstructure before it blew. Homemade physics. Officially unauthorized. Rayner didn't care. He'd seen what standard drops did. Scorch marks, rattled beams, maybe a bent truss. Never the kill shot. This trick? This one might work. He pulled slightly left to correct for wind shear. Readings off by 3 knots from the briefing. Adjusted the release timer manually. 12 seconds. The cockpit smelled of oil, rubber, and adrenaline. His right glove stuck to the yoke from yesterday's fuel patch. He thought of nothing. Just angles, just airspeed, just the drop. 10 seconds. Radio silence. No chatter. Just the drone of propellers and the ticking of a homemade trick stitched from desperation. They taught him to fly straight. He learned to fly crooked. Continue, June 12th, 1944. 08:21 hours. South of the bridge, La Roche-sur-Yon. The convoy behind the span didn't stop in time. 2 Panzer IV-4s skidded into the back of a fuel truck. The driver leapt clear, barely, as the tank crushed the engine block. Fuel spilled, steam rose. A corporal lit a flare by instinct and was tackled before it touched ground. No orders, no clarity, only panic. The eastern span was gone, twisted iron drooping into brown water, crates bobbed like coffins. A body face down in the reeds. Inside the comms tent, radios hissed with static. Allied jamming. Or maybe the mast fell. No one could confirm. The lieutenant screamed into a handset, but the line was dead. "Use runners," someone shouted. 3 messengers sprinted, all in different directions. One didn't make it far. His boot caught a broken beam, and he dropped into the river with his satchel. On the northern bank, stretcher teams scrambled toward the blast zone. A soldier clutched at a shattered femur, crying for his mother. A sergeant tried to redirect traffic, shouting for half-tracks to reverse. But there was no space, only metal, mud, and men shouting over each other. Grenade crates had burst open. One rolled under a Kubelwagen tire. Everyone froze. It didn't go off, yet. Above, another Allied plane traced the edge of the valley, but didn't attack, just watched. Lieutenant Voss gripped the handrail of the command post. His certainty, the steel, the schedules, the pride, had fractured. And he hadn't even seen the bomb land. June 12th, 1944. 08:37 hours. Under the wreckage. The river moved slower now, choked with oil, wood, and silence. Sapper Emil Braun had been on the Eastern maintenance team. 4 hours ago, he'd stood under the arch, inspecting bolt joints. Overbuilt, he'd called it, like a cathedral. Now he crouched beneath what was left of that same arch, prying at a twisted beam with bare hands. Blood on his knuckles. Smoke in his throat. Near his feet, half submerged, lay the body of Corporal Dieter Schott. Face up, eyes open. Still holding a photo. A woman and 2 daughters, standing in front of a bakery in Dresden. Braun whispered, he wasn't supposed to be on shift. The bridge had always been his pride. He could recite every steel weight, every load tolerance, every angle. But now, staring at the wreckage, the snapped cables, the child's drawing soaked in diesel, none of it mattered. He pulled a waterlogged notebook from his pocket. Pages stuck together. He opened to the entry from last Thursday. Reinforced lower strut, no sign of fatigue. Suggested adding third redundancy beam. Denied. Not necessary, they said. He tore the page out and let it drift downstream. Not as protest, as apology. Up above, Lieutenant Voss moved slowly along the surviving rail. He watched Braun kneel beside the corporal, saw the photo, didn't speak. No one did. The men around the bridge no longer shouted. They mumbled, moved slowly, eyes to the ground. Not because they feared another bombing run, but because they understood. This wasn't a battle loss. It was a personal one. They hadn't lost to more steel. They'd lost to a single man with an idea. June 12th, 1944, 10:03 hours. Southern Command Outpost, La Roche-sur-Yon. Two engineers argued over blueprints. Neither noticed the coffee cooling in their cups. Lieutenant Voss stood in the doorway, silent. He watched them point, not at the bridge's failure points, but at protocols, at doctrine, at lines drawn months ago in Berlin. It was a lucky shot, one insisted. But luck didn't twist steel. Luck didn't climb up from the river, wrap itself around support girders, and tear them apart from the inside. This wasn't luck. It was a systems failure. The Third Reich had built a war machine of exquisite complexity, but no margin for surprise, no redundancy for creativity. Fuel lines depended on custom parts, shipped from factories, now under bombing siege. Vehicle convoys were a zoo of models, Czech, Polish, French retooled tanks, each demanding its own wrench. Rayner's trick exploited that brittleness. One improvised fuse bypassed 1,000,000 Reichsmarks of engineering. The Americans could mass-produce bombs, but more dangerously, they could reinvent them. Voss opened a captured Allied field manual from last winter. Inside, hand-drawn sketches of terrain, notes in pencil, even a joke written beside a bridge schematic. If it rattles, it's probably French. If it sings, it's probably American. He closed the book. They hadn't just underestimated enemy firepower. They'd underestimated enemy thought. Outside, soldiers cut the last twisted girder for recovery. No cheers, no vengeance. Just a quiet hum, like a lesson, reverberating in the bones of every man left standing. June 12th, 1944. 11:26 hours, 15,000 feet, returning to base. Captain Will Stitch Rayner flew in silence. The headset crackled once, then cleared. Bridge confirmed down. Return as planned. He didn't answer, just toggled the stick slightly, banking west toward the channel. His cockpit rattled, not from damage, but from something looser, tension unspoken. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded note. It was from a mechanic at Manston Field. If it works, buy me a beer. If it doesn't, well, you won't have to. The trick had worked, but Rayner didn't feel victorious. He pictured the bridge falling, not the explosion, the quiet after, the way the Eastern Truss gave out like a sigh. He'd seen bridges collapse before, but this one haunted him. Because he knew, as sure as his altimeter read 15,200, someone had died thinking the span would hold. He didn't know their name, didn't need to. He knew the look, the final blink of belief, turning to realization. And maybe that was enough. He reached down, flicked off the bomb control. No more payloads, just the weight of what he'd done. Below, the clouds began to clear. He thought of the river, of the arch, of the trick, and wondered if the man below had looked up. The after-action report was 2 pages long, typed in stiff lines, signed in triplicate. Bridge at La Roche-sur-Yon, destroyed by single aerial ordnance. Probable structural resonance. Investigating fuse irregularity. Recommend increased truss redundancies across river crossings within Luftflotte 3 sector. No mention of corporal shot. No note about the improvised fuse. No diagram of the bridge's last breath. Just numbers. Just blame. Lieutenant Voss stared at the page, then at the coffee, then at nothing. Behind him, 2 Oberleutnants discussed reallocating sappers to the Loire. One joked about American cleverness, as if it were a temporary inconvenience, like rain. But the trick hadn't been clever. It had been precise, humble, devastating. German command did issue a directive. Engineers were to reevaluate fuse tolerances for anti-bridge defense systems. Another line ordered bridge sentries to monitor for non-standard bombing trajectories. But no one wrote about the sound the span made before it fell, a sound that still rang in Voss's dreams. Across the channel, Allied intelligence logged the strike with quiet interest. The pilot's log noted only, drop successful, fuse technique effective, recommend field standardization. He didn't name the trick, didn't claim invention. 2 weeks later, the same technique would collapse a bridge in Brittany, then another in the Ardennes. But no citation, no ribbon, no photograph, just a line in a file. One trick, born in the hands of a pilot with a welded washer and a hunch, and it had shaken the spine of German logistics from the inside out. Voss folded the report, slid it into a drawer. He didn't need another copy. He remembered every line. June 14, 1944, dawn. Ruins of the La Roche-sur-Yon bridge. The river was quiet again. Mist drifted over bent rebar and shattered stone. A lone field crow picked at something glinting near the bank, a snapped dog tag, half buried in silt. Lieutenant Voss walked the southern embankment in silence. No clipboard, no escort, just boots and breath. Where there had once been symmetry, order, weight-bearing logic, now there was absence. Not just the missing span, but the certainty it once carried. He stopped where the eastern truss had anchored, now a stump of blackened concrete, hairline cracks running like veins. Someone had left a helmet there. Inside it, a photograph. The same woman and daughters from Dresden. He didn't touch it. He sat on the stone edge, lit a cigarette, and looked east, over the river, over the place where steel once proved strength. He remembered what he had said 2 days earlier. They can't touch this span. But they had, not with superior force, with imagination. He crushed the cigarette, stood slowly, and spoke to no one. We built bridges to cross rivers. His voice caught. They built bridges to cross our certainty. He left the helmet where it sat and walked away.